Is the state ready for your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Davis, is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, let's proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Trials, a lot of times, are described like a puzzle. This trial will not be like an 8-piece puzzle that maybe your children or grandchildren use. This trial will have many pieces to it. And each individual piece, in and of itself, you may look at and be unclear how it fits into the ultimate puzzle. But like a puzzle, we ask that you be patient, that you work the puzzle, find the edge pieces, look at each piece of evidence as it comes in. And as the evidence comes in, and you start piecing the puzzle together, at the conclusion of this trial, the picture will be clear. The picture will show that DeMarcus Little is guilty of malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault. As the court indicated, opening statements are what the parties anticipate the evidence to be. Kind of like looking at the picture on the box of the puzzle before you take the puzzle pieces out and dump them on the kitchen table. In this trial, you will be taken down a path of a relationship between DeMarcus Little and anitra-gunn. A path of a relationship that is filled with manipulation, control, threats, intimidation, possessiveness, a path that leads and ends on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2020, when DeMarcus Little choked anitra-gunn to death. The evidence will show that he admitted choking anitra-gunn by manual strangulation with his hands, causing her death on Valentine's Day. He made that admission to Javon Abel. He made that admission to killing anitra-gunn 2 days after Valentine's Day. He made that admission on February 16, 2020, to his close friend, Javon Abel. You will hear from Mr. Abel. You will also be taken down a path in this trial through a wooded plot of land off Greer Road in Crawford County. You will be taken down this path through this wooded plot of land where DeMarcus Little dumped anitra-gunn's body. After he choked her to death, he put her in her own vehicle in the trunk, drove her into the woods, and disposed of her body. DeMarcus Little tried to hide her phone, her bumper, her body, and the truth about her death. Good morning. I've introduced myself before, but my name is Neil Halvorson. Seated with us at the table is Special Agent Kristen Nunez, Senior Assistant District Attorney Don Baskin, and investigator Melissa Kidd. February 13th. The evidence is going to show that there was a party on Carver Drive on February 13th of 2020. On that day, anitra-gunn, a 22-year-old college student, a senior at Fort Valley State University, with her whole life in front of her, went to a party on Carver Drive. She went with her friend, India King. Eventually, February 13th turns into February 14th in the early morning hours. And she leaves that party. She leaves that party with DeMarcus Little. India King had left with other friends. And so, anitra-gunn, DeMarcus Little, and two other individuals leave that party in Carver. Those two other individuals are Tracy King and Javon Abram. All four, DeMarcus Little, anitra-gunn, Javon Abram, and Tracy King, leave the party on Carver, and they go to a residence at 420 Chestnut Hill. You will hear that this is the residence that DeMarcus Little was staying at. It's his aunt's residence. You may hear her referred to as Aunt Glock, Cherie told her. That's where DeMarcus Little was staying. Tracy King has to go to work the next day. And so, Javon Abram takes DeMarcus Little's vehicle that DeMarcus Little was using at the time. It's a 2019 black Toyota Corolla with the red pinstripe. Javon Abram takes Tracy King home to Warner Robins. DeMarcus Little and anitra-gunn get dropped off on the way to Warner Robins by Javon Abram, get dropped off at anitra-gunn's residence by the way West Church Street. So all four of them leave the party on Carver. They go to 420 Chestnut Hill. All four of them leave 420 Chestnut Hill and take DeMarcus Little and anitra-gunn to her residence. DeMarcus Little and anitra-gunn get out and get into her white in color 2013 Chevy Cruze. Javon Abram and Tracy King leave to go to Warner Robins to take Tracy King home so he could work the next day. DeMarcus Little and anitra-gunn get in Anitra's white in color Chevy Cruze. It's about 1:30 in the morning on Valentine's Day. And they go to Waffle House in Byron. They get there roughly around 2 o'clock in the morning. They stay about half an hour. They leave around 2:28 in the morning. And then they, DeMarcus Little and anitra-gunn, in her Chevy Cruze, go back to 420 Chestnut Hill. The evidence will show that Aunt Glock, Ms. Tolbert, sees them, sees DeMarcus Little and Anitra-Gunn go into a bedroom at that residence. Other than the defendant, Cherie Tolbert, Aunt Glock, is the last person to see Anitra-Gunn alive. That's because she doesn't leave 420 Chestnut Hill Drive alive. It was there that DeMarcus Little strangled her, choked her with his hands, killing her. As you will learn from Javon Abram, when DeMarcus Little made his confession about choking and killing Anitra-Gunn, DeMarcus Little then takes her lifeless body, drives her car, the white Chevy Cruze, around to the back of the house at 420 Chestnut Hill and puts her body into the trunk. Javon Abram, I told you, left in DeMarcus Little's vehicle. He went to Warner Robins to take Tracy King home so that he could go to work. Some point in the middle of that night, Javon Abram comes back to 420 Chestnut Hill. What Javon Abram will tell you will be corroborated by other evidence in this case, by phone evidence that I will talk about in more detail, and by photographs of the tire marks, the fresh tire marks in the grass going around the back of the residence at 420 Chestnut Hill that were taken by law enforcement the following day, February 15th. Anitra-Gunn is dead in the trunk of her own car, choked to death by DeMarcus Little. About 11:30 a.m. Later that morning, the defendant, DeMarcus Little, gets into his 2019 Toyota Corolla, black in color, with the red pinstripe. And he leaves 420 Chestnut Hill. Javon Abram doesn't know where he's going, but he leaves. Importantly, DeMarcus Little leaves his phone at 420 Chestnut Hill. He leaves it plugged in, it's charging. You will hear some testimony from Lisa Maxwell, a forensic expert about data that can be pulled off of cell phones, including when users lock and unlock their cell phone and when the phone is charging, when it's plugged in and charging. DeMarcus Little left in his 2019 black and color Toyota Corolla that he was using. He left with the red pinstripe. His phone was still at the residence, but he did have a phone. He had Anitra-Gunn's phone. During that morning and continuing into the early afternoon, Anitra's friends, Sierra Stewart and David Howard, who you will hear referred to as by his nickname Scoot, S-C-O-O-T, Scoot. The two of them that morning had been receiving some odd, unusual text messages from Anitra's phone. Now, Scoot is a friend, was a friend of Anitra Little. And the evidence will show that the two of them had been intimate on the 13th in the early morning hours prior to the party on Crawford. At that time, Scoot thought that he left another phone. He has two phones, and you'll hear him talk about that. But he thought he had left a phone at Anitra's house. And so he texts Anitra's phone. Hey, did I leave my other phone at your residence? And Anitra's phone responds to those text messages. But when Scoot, David Howard, gets those responses, they're odd, they're unusual, they don't make any sense. Anitra seems to be asking in the responsive text messages where he, Scoot, lived, although Anitra knew where he lived. The text messages from Anitra's phone seem to be asking what he, Scoot, looks like. But she knew what he looks like. And the text messages that Scoot gets from Anitra's phone seem to be suggesting that they're going to break up or end the relationship. But they weren't in a relationship. Now, Scoot will tell you that as he was getting these odd, strange messages from Anitra's phone, the messages were talking about that she was coming by, that she was going to come to Scoot. So Scoot's outside, waiting for Anitra to come by. But he doesn't see Anitra come by. When Anitra's phone is texting him, I'm coming by, Scoot doesn't see Anitra. What does he see? A black and colored car with a red pinstripe and one individual in that vehicle, a man. Scoot is so concerned about these text messages now that he's getting from Anitra's phone that he notes the tag number on that black and colored vehicle occupied by one adult male with the red pinstripe. And that tag number that he notes comes back to the vehicle that DeMarcus Little was driving, 2019 Toyota Corolla, black in color, with red pinstripe. As he was receiving texts from Anitra's phone that she was coming by, it wasn't Anitra. It was DeMarcus Little. Scoot was also so concerned about these text messages that he was getting that he tracks down the number of one of Anitra's close friends, Sierra Stewart. And he talks to Sierra. He calls her and says, hey, is Anitra with you? Is Anitra playing some kind of game? Some kind of joke? Sierra says, no, Anitra's not with me. Sierra was also getting strange, odd, text messages that morning from Anitra's phone. They both agree that someone else is texting from Anitra's phone. They both believe that DeMarcus Little is the one that has Anitra's phone, and they even confront DeMarcus Little, telling him to give Anitra her phone back. When DeMarcus Little is confronted by Scoot and Sierra Stewart, he denies having her phone and says that Anitra-Gunn left. She left around 11 o'clock. He's inconsistent with the times, but generally around 11 o'clock. And she left for an interview, is what he tells her friends who are concerned about her. She left for an interview around 11 o'clock. The evidence will suggest that Anitra's phone stops all outgoing activity around 11:53 that morning, Valentine's Day. People are still calling and texting her phone, but that there's no more outgoing calls or texts. DeMarcus Little would later, on February 16th, 2 days later, in his confession to his close friend, Javon Abram, tell Javon Abram what he did with Anitra's phone. That he took Anitra's phone and he tossed it, disposed of it like trash, into a culvert or a drainage pipe outside the residence at 602 South Camille Boulevard. You will hear some additional evidence from Captain Marbury and others about Anitra's phone. So now, Anitra-Gunn is dead, choked to death at the hand of DeMarcus Little in the trunk of her own car. Her phone had sent messages to Scoot and to Sierra Stewart. And her phone has now been disposed of and thrown in this culvert or drainage ditch. Now at approximately 12:30 in the afternoon on Valentine's Day, the defendant, DeMarcus Little, and Javon Abram go to a gun and pawn store. Here, the defendant purchases a 9mm firearm, completes the purchase around 12:44. That will be verified by additional phone evidence and pictures from the surveillance at the gun and pawn store. The two of them then return to 420 Chestnut Hill. And then, shortly after 1 p.m., the defendant, DeMarcus Little, leaves 420 Chestnut Hill again. This time, he leaves not in his Toyota Corolla, but he leaves in Anitra-Gunn's 2013 white and color Chevy Cruze with two important things: her body, dead, murdered, in the trunk of her own car, and his phone. You will learn about the evidence relating to his phone, about the tracking locations that law enforcement is able to pull off the phone. You will know that he has his phone with him because he's on his phone. You will see calls and text messages. He's communicating on his phone. He eventually returns to 420 Chestnut Hill later in the afternoon. But when he comes back, he doesn't come back with Anitra's body. That's because, as he admits to Javon Abel 2 days later on the 16th, DeMarcus Little drives Anitra-Gunn's vehicle out to that wooded plot of land off of Greer Road in Crawford County. He admits to dumping her body, disposing it, covering it with some limbs and debris. He drives her car out through the woods beyond any established path. This isn't a paved road or a gravel road. He goes far enough back into the woods that passing cars can't see. This is an area that's not traveled by other traffic. It's difficult to get in and out. So difficult that during the course of that, he actually strikes some of the trees there, at least one specific tree, causing some of the parts of her vehicle to come off, including the front bumper and some reflective lights and some wheel well lining. Evidence which you will later learn helps law enforcement find her body. Now, Lisa Maxwell, a nationally recognized forensic examiner, will testify that DeMarcus Little's phone was in that wooded area off Greer Road where he took Anitra's body and admitted to dumping it after killing her. His phone was in that wooded area from approximately 1:05 to 1:47 p.m. on Valentine's Day. During that time period, he was on his phone, he was calling people, he was texting, returning calls, texts. He was communicating on that phone. And that evidence will support what Javon Abel will tell you. Now, at that same time, the defendant had told Javon Abel, get in the Toyota Corolla and drive around Fort Valley. Go to Anitra's house. Check on Anitra. Javon Abram will tell you that that seemed like an odd request, but he did. He took DeMarcus's vehicle and drove around Fort Valley, the black in color Toyota Corolla with the red pinstripe. Approximately 2 o'clock that afternoon. Still on Valentine's Day. After dumping her body into the woods, the defendant takes Anitra's 2013 Chevy Cruze, now missing that front bumper. He takes it to Bell and Montrose. Random location, parks kind of next to a house. You will hear from Brenda Vargas. Ms. Vargas will testify that she was coming home from work that afternoon around 2 o'clock, and she saw the vehicle parked there behind her house. She will describe that she saw a young African-American male kind of pacing around the car. And she will tell you that that car, the white car with the front bumper missing, was not there earlier in the day when she left to go to work, but around 2 o'clock when she comes home from her work, which was on break with our car. She sees that car there. And then DeMarcus Little, the defendant, reaches out to Javon Abram and says, "Hey, come pick me up at Bella Montrose." Javon Abram will testify that he does. He comes pick DeMarcus Little up at Bella Montrose. And Javon Abram sees a car that he thinks might be Anitra's car. And he asks his friend, DeMarcus Little, "Hey, is that Anitra's car?" And DeMarcus Little says, no, that's not. The two of them now, DeMarcus Little and Javon Abram, go to Warner Robins. They go to various stores in Warner Robins, Walmart, Target, Hobby Lobby. They eventually end up at DeMarcus Little's father's house. And then at approximately 8:51 that evening, Sierra Stewart, anitra-Gunn's friend, won't let go the concerns that she had from earlier in the day about those strange text messages she was receiving. She's now reached out to Anitra's brother, Antoine. Anitra's father, Christopher Gunn, is now calling and texting. And Anitra's brother learns that Anitra's cell phone provider, Sprint, can track the location of her phone after a period of time. Not coincidentally, the evidence will show that at that same time, the defendant, DeMarcus Little, now suddenly remembers. He suddenly realizes that Anitra has shared her location. And he now learns that she's at that 602 South Camilla Boulevard address. So he makes a production about going from his location in Warner Robins to the 602 South Camilla. DeMarcus Little, Javon Abram, and a young lady named Shania McHenry all traveled from Warner Robins to 602 South Camilla. And DeMarcus Little even has Javon Abram kind of film a FaceTime call that he makes, DeMarcus Little, with Christopher Gunn, Anitra's father, as he's trying to look for Anitra. Of course, he doesn't look in the culvert in the drainage ditch where he'd already tossed her phone. And of course, Anitra Gunn is not at 602 South Camilla. She's lying dead in the woods. The next day, February 15th, the evidence will show that DeMarcus Little and Javon Abram joined Anitra's family looking for her. She's now hasn't had contact with friends and family into the 15th. And the group comes across her car parked at Bella Montrose. And Javon Abram will testify that he hears the defendant, DeMarcus Little, tell Anitra's family, hey, that's her car. Despite the day before, DeMarcus Little said, no, that's not her car. Parked there at Bella Montrose. It was at this moment that Javon Abram started to get suspicious. It was at this moment that Javon Abram started to wonder, did his friend, DeMarcus Little, have something to do with Anitra's death, Anitra's disappearance? And those suspicions were confirmed. Because on the next day, February 16th, Sunday, after DeMarcus and Javon attend church, DeMarcus Little tells Javon Abram, hey, I've got something I need to tell you. They get into DeMarcus's vehicle and they start to drive. And while they're driving, the evidence will show that during that conversation, during that drive, DeMarcus Little admits to his friend, Javon Abram, that he killed anitra-gunn. This is what we anticipate the evidence will show. DeMarcus Little told Javon Abram that in the early morning of February 14th, Valentine's Day, that DeMarcus had kind of poured his heart out to Anitra, and she spurned him. She laughed at him. Javon will tell you that DeMarcus Little then struck Anitra, hit her, and choked her. Choked her to death. Strangled her with his hands. Killed her at 420 Chestnut Hill. Took her body, put it in the trunk of her vehicle, drove out to the woods off the Greer Road and disposed of her body. And as DeMarcus is telling Javon Abram what he did, he's driving into the woods. He's driving into the same wooded area, the same spot that he drove to 2 days earlier on the 14th. He takes Javon Abram into that wooded area where he dumped Anitra's body to retrieve something. The white bumper. The bumper that came off of Anitra's vehicle when DeMarcus Little initially drove out to the woods to dump the body. I anticipate the evidence will show that Javon watched as DeMarcus gets out of the vehicle, picks up the white bumper, tries to put it into the back of the Toyota Corolla. It doesn't fit. Javon Abram kind of helps lay down one of the seats so that it fits into the trunk. Javon Abram will then testify that they drive back out of the woods, travel further away from 420 Chestnut Hill, and they dump the bumper at a different location, off the side of the road, kind of over a hill, where that bumper remained for about 2 years, until earlier this year, February of this year. It was recovered. How was it recovered? Because law enforcement never stopped working on this case. because law enforcement wanted to bring you, the jury, the evidence in this case. Now, the bumper had been out in the elements, of course, for about 2 years. And they didn't expect to find any kind of CSI type evidence on it. But they looked, they tried, because they knew you, the jury, would want them to. That all happened on February 16th, when DeMarcus Little confessed and admitted to killing anitra-gunn. February 18th, 2020. Anitra now has been missing for 4 days, since Valentine's Day. And I anticipate the evidence will show that at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or shortly thereafter, investigator Brian Stewart, of the Peach County Sheriff's Office, was doing like many law enforcement and friends and family of anitra-gunn were doing. And he was out looking for her. And you will hear that he came across an area off of Greer Road in Crawford County, a wooded area, that he noticed what appeared to be kind of impressions in the grass. Perhaps maybe a car had driven into that area. So he follows that. He follows through the woods down this path. You'll see pictures. You will be taken down this path. And as he continues, he eventually sees a car park. He confirms that that car park is consistent with belonging to a 2013 Chevy Cruze. It's part of the wheel well. He takes a few more steps in the woods, looks to his right, and then sees what I would imagine is an image that will be with him for the rest of his life. He sees anitra-gunn, Christopher Gunn's daughter, dead. Covered with some debris. You'll see the pictures. They are disturbing. We ask that you note how she appears. Note how she's dressed. Note her clothes, her hair. You will see that she's not wearing undergarments. You will see that she doesn't have shoes on or socks on. You will see that she has no makeup, no fake eyelashes, no wig. Her shorts are not even fully zipped up. Her purse is not with her. Her phone, of course, is not with her. Recall those images. And recall what DeMarcus Little told Sierra Stewart and Scoot David Howard, that she left 420 Chestnut Hill to go to an interview. It, of course, is for you, the jury, to determine the credibility of the testimony. We would ask that you look at that evidence, those pictures, and determine if she appears as if she was dressed for an interview. At this point, of course, law enforcement is no longer working a missing person case. They're now working a murder. They continue to investigate. The GBI, who had been assisting up to this point, now becomes officially involved as the lead agency. The investigation continues. Folks are interviewed and, where necessary, re-interviewed. Javon Abel is one of those individuals. You will hear that Javon Abram was interviewed on at least 3 different occasions. On February 19th, on February 20th, and on February 26th. Special Agent Nunez makes contact with Javon Abram for a 3rd time on February 26th. Why? Because she believes that Mr. Abram has some additional information. She believes that when she had talked to Mr. Abram previously, he was not completely forthright. He was holding some stuff back. She believed that he was burdened with some additional information when she talked with him the first couple times. So she talks to him again on February 26th. And it's on this day, February 26th, that Javon Abram, burdened with the knowledge that his close friend, DeMarcus Little, had killed another friend of his, anitra-gunn, that he tells Special Agent Nunez about that conversation he had with DeMarcus Little on February 16th. The conversation that occurred after church on February 16th, where DeMarcus Little confessed to choking anitra-gunn and killing her, where DeMarcus Little confessed to taking her body, putting it in the trunk of her own white Chevy Cruze, where DeMarcus Little confessed to driving out to the woods off of Greer Road and disposing of her body, and where DeMarcus Little confessed to hiding her phone in that culvert at 602 South Camilla. Let's talk a little bit about Javon Abram. He's going to testify. You will hear from him. And he will tell you about that burden that he was carrying, about his close friend, DeMarcus Little, and what he had told him. It weighed heavy on him. And he had been pulled into the crime. He had helped dispose of some of the evidence, the bumper. He had helped hide some of the evidence. You will hear that he has charges pending before this court, before this judge. He has charges for tampering with evidence, concealing the death of another. He has charges pending in another jurisdiction, Lowndes County, for the statements that he gave to Special Agent Nunez the first couple of times that she talked with him, because he had not been completely forthcoming with all of the information that he knew. But there have been no deals, no offers, no promises to Javon Abram. Another jury at another time will deal with Javon Abram and his charges. He will testify and he will tell you that he has charges pending, but there's been no offers, no promises, and no deals. And importantly, law enforcement was able to corroborate what Javon Abram had told them. Recall, at this time, February 26th, Anitra's car had already been recovered at Bella Montrose on the 15th. Recall that Anitra's body had already been recovered on February 18th. But what had not yet been recovered was Anitra's phone. So when Javon Abram says that DeMarcus Little admitted to me that he killed Anitra, dumped her body in the woods in Crawford, off of Greer Road, that DeMarcus Little dumped her car at Bella Montrose and I picked him up afterwards. and that DeMarcus Little threw her phone in a culvert, a drainage pipe, at 602 South Camilla. Law enforcement goes to 602 South Camilla, looks in the drainage pipe in the culvert, and what do they find? Anitra's phone. They were able to corroborate what Javon Abram had told them. Now, Anitra may not have had her phone with her, but DeMarcus Little did. And you will hear the testimony that DeMarcus Little's phone will actually be one of the main witnesses against him. His phone will show you that he was in the woods on February 14th, off of Weir Road, from approximately 105 to 147. His phone will show you that he was at the intersection of Bell and Montrose on February 14th at approximately 2 o'clock. His phone will show you that he knew Anitra-Gunn was dead on February 14th. You will see that the day before, February 13th, DeMarcus Little either called or texted Anitra at least 60 times. Note how few times he calls or texts after February 14th. The phone will also give you insight into the toxic, abusive, possessive, controlling, threatening, and intimidating relationship between Anitra-Gunn and DeMarcus Little. The phone will show you threats that DeMarcus Little made. The phone will show you the manipulation, admissions of violence and destruction. The phone will show you what lengths DeMarcus Little was willing to go to when Anitra-Gunn did not do what he wanted. You will also hear about an incident that happened on February 5, 2020, when DeMarcus Little smashed the windows of her residence and cut the tires to her car. Why? Because he heard another individual. We later learned that that other individual was Scoot, David Howard. Because DeMarcus Little had heard and was aware and knew that Anitra was with another man on February 5. So he busts out windows and slashes her tires. And you will hear that that was the second time that her tires had actually been cut or slashed. You will hear about how her friends begged her to get away before it was too late. I've already touched on it, but you're going to hear some technical evidence from some phone experts. You're going to hear some evidence about cache locations, not cache like money, but cache like data within the phone. You're going to hear about how phones store information even when we're not using them. Information about location, information about charging, information about locking and unlocking the device. And that information will corroborate the other evidence in this case. That information will corroborate what Javon Abram will tell you. And at the end of this trial, you will have the evidence which will show beyond a reasonable doubt that DeMarcus Little is guilty of killing with malice aforethought anitra-gunn, by strangling her, by choking her with his hands. That DeMarcus Little is guilty of felony murder in that he killed anitra-gunn while in commission of a felony. That felony being aggravated assault by choking, by strangling her with his hands. On February 14, 2020, here at Peach County. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defendant will reserve his opening statement.
Okay.